speaker, one more UI developer from Great Dynamics Poland, Artem Ivanov, and his talk today is NestJS, the brave new world of the backend in Node. Artem, welcome. I'm passing you the steering wheel.
Thank you, Anton, and welcome everyone on Dynamic Talk. And yes, today I'm going to talk about NestJS and why I'm really thinking that it's a brave new world for the backend in Node. And first of all, let's just answer a simple question: why exactly Nest? Because there's really a lot of different Node.js frameworks like a Fastify, Sales, Restify, Core, Express, and all that stuff. But honestly, from my personal perspective, the most of those frameworks that doesn't seem really unpromising. What do I mean? When we're talking about the solid frameworks like Angular or Spring, we do in this kind of frameworks we do have some infrastructure which helps us to keep thinking about the management of the instances, how to combine different parts of our application, which parts of application do we really need at all, and all that stuff. I guess you'll already understand what I'm talking about, but just a clarification. For example, in Angular, we do have services, pipes, components, models, and all this stuff, and those things are kind of architectural blocks. And using those architectural blocks, you don't have to think which particular approach to make instances, which particular approach do I have to use at all. And I guess you already understand what I'm pushing forward to. Mostly the NestJS is for Angular fans, or for example, Spring fans who are going to make something in Node. And if you like Angular, if you like a single source of the truth, in the case of the Angular, in the case of NestJS as well, we don't have any big amount of different boilerplates, different best practices and all this stuff. We do have the single source of the truth is the Angular documentation, and that's basically it. And everything that you need, you can find there. And what next? The next thing, the TypeScript. We do have a bunch of libraries which are has extensions under the TypeScript, but usually when the library is having some types library under it, it's not so comfortable than when the framework is based on the TypeScript, because every time you have to think, what to type is that, how should I type that, and all this stuff. The pure OP approach on the high-level architecture. Existing architectural blocks, which are already mentioned, like decorators, components, and all that stuff. Decorators as a way to configure all those architectural blocks. And the dependency injection for sure. And RxJS, if you like. RxJS, we do have it in Nest as well. And everything of that we do have out of the box in both Angular and NestJS. And if you like all those things, the NestJS is basically the best choice for you. So here I just want to clarify that it's not like the only point of view. It's just an approach. If you like the Angular approach or Spring approach and you want to see something like that on the Node side, the Nest is good for you. And currently I'm talking about this approach only. So let's move forward. Let's move the technical part on later time, and let's talk about some formal things. The first thing here is community. I'm going to talk about that just because when I'm choosing the particular framework, sometimes you're worrying about what if I'll face with some bug, with some question or something like that. Would it be answered or not? And as you can see at the GitHub, we do have like 32,000 of repositories, which are depends on the NestJS common. There are almost 5,000 of closed issues at GitHub. There's 300 of thousands of downloads, of weekly downloads at NPM, and there's almost 200 of contributors. So looking at this slide, we can answer this question that the NestJS is already quite stable and already have a quite good and strong community. So don't worry about your question and bugs. Most probably your question will be answered. Next thing is the ecosystem. So what we already have implemented in the Nest. The first thing is the CLI. In the case of the Angular, we do have quite beautiful CLI for generation of the tests, of the services, components, and all that stuff. We have definitely the same in the Nest. The second thing here is the Swagger, for sure. For sure, we do have a bunch of implemented solutions to be connected with the databases like TypeORM or Mongoose or all this stuff. And for sure, authentication like a passport or JSON Web Token utilities, GraphQL solutions for sure, Elasticsearch, Cloud Filters, Kafka, all that stuff. And actually, nobody will, you for sure able to implement something by yourself, create a separate model based on some different node models or your own one. So everything is quite comfortable. So here we can say that the NestJS has a quite good ecosystem, and it's just a high-level list. There is much more of things which are already implemented. I just picked up the most important things from my perspective. So, and the next point for me is the combination of the Nest and Angular. As I already mentioned a bunch of times, the Nest is very similar to Angular. Actually, even the owners of this framework marking in the GitHub repository that the architecture of the NestJS is heavily inspired by Angular. So, what do we have as a pros here? Is the same approach. The main thing is the same approach. And while we do have TypeScript in both Angular and Nest, we can share our code between those two frameworks. We can implement it, for example, with a monorepo or something like that. And it's quite useful, for example, for creation of GTO models or something like that. Dependency sharing. We can implement it with a monorepo. We can implement it with a node models caching or something like that, and it's quite good for building performance as well. And next thing is the engineers sharing, because the Nest is quite similar to Angular. The same React, the same TypeScript and all that stuff. So the most probably any kind of UI engineer will be definitely able to any kind of Angular UI engineer will be able to do something in Nest, and it would be uncomfortable for him. And as already mentioned, you shouldn't be surprised at all when you take a look at the Angular code and Nest code, and you wouldn't see any difference. This is completely the same approach, like decorators to configure something, classes, and all that stuff. But let's get back for it later. Not everyone likes like a front-end engineer's approach, but maybe for someone it will be helpful. So let's take a look on the NestJS in action. Don't expect any rocket science or something like that. There will be just quite basic stuff. And the first thing that we need is entities, how to connect your application with a database in NestJS. For sure, I will use the type-ORM because it's the kind of most popular library for connectivity with the databases. It's the most popular ORM solution at all. And the entity in NestJS and type-ORM looks like that. We do have entity decorator, which marks a class, entity class, and we do have like a properties with decorators for ID and basic column. And let's also take a look at other example. Here we do have another entity, and as you can see here we do have a many-to-many relation from movie to genres. And here we're also able to configure the join table. Also, we're able to configure lazy or eager loading and all that stuff. There's a lot of configuration issues, but let's skip this part just to show high level. The second thing here is the services. Because we do need to work with the data somehow. So the service looks like that. The first thing here is the injectable decorator, which is marks the class of the service. And it's definitely the same as Angular injectable decorator. And second thing here that the second thing here is the inject repository decorator, which injects a repository. And if you was doing something in the Spring, for example, you can ask me like, where do we have like a interface or something like that for the repository? Because in the Spring, for example, to get even the like basic implementation of the repository, we do have to make some interface on that. It will be implemented by the system, but we have to create an interface. But the full implementation of the repository generates automatically with a combination of the type-ORM and NestJS. Is quite comfortable thing. And next thing here is controller. Here we do have the controller for the movies. This decorator decorates the class for a controller, and this this string will mark the part of the path for this for endpoints on this controller. Here we do have the inject decorator, which injects the service. Again, we don't need the constructor to inject it. For Angular developers, it will be helpful, something new. And just a method with a mapping, and this method will be called when the get mapping of this controller will be called. And that's basically it. And let's implement some another stuff, for example, Swagger. The first thing here is the API tags decorator. It marks the particular controller. And the second thing, the Swagger configuration for a particular endpoint. Here we can describe our endpoint with a status, type, a description, is it array or not, and all this stuff. And we'll get we'll get implementation of a Swagger in very simple way. Next thing here, what I want to show you is the pipes. Pipes is the thing which allows us to pre-process something before our controller will get it. To apply the pipes on some particular endpoint and some particular mapping, we have to use the use pipes decorator with the particular pipe instance. In this case, I've created the pipe for a validation of the pagination params. Here, in this controller, we're taking the take and skip pagination params with the default values, and it's the query params for sure. And using decorator use pipes, as I already mentioned, we are applying the particular pipe sentences. In this case, I'm creating an instance of the pagination param validation pipe. And the whole this mapping looks like that. And how the pipe looks like. Pipes look like that. It should be class which implements the pipe transform interface. And the first thing here that we are getting the max take value parameter, and as you have seen on the initialization of this pipes instance, we do need it for them just for a max value of the take parameter. We are passing it here. So we're taking it here, and next thing we are implementing the pipe transfer interface with the method transform, which takes the data which we are going to take in the method in the mapping. And here we're just throwing an error if the take parameter is too big. It's just again, it's just an example, quite high level. You can implement anything else up to your preferences. It's just an example, as already mentioned. Let's draw the bottom line. Why do we really NestJS, and why do I think that the NestJS is the quite good solution for you? The first thing here is the TypeScript base. As I already mentioned, it's much more comfortable when the framework is initially based on the TypeScript. It's quite comfortable. We do have a DI in NestJS, so you don't have to think how to which particular architectural blocks you have to create. You don't have to think how to inject all those stuff, and it's quite comfortable at all. We do have a RxJS. We do have a scalability because all the stuff above, and the whole infrastructure we do have out of the box. And the last thing here is the NestJS excellent with the Angular. That's basically it from my side. Thank you, everyone, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you, Artem. I don't see any open questions in Q&A so far. Guys, if you have any, please post or raise your hand. And maybe one question from my end in the meantime, Artem. Does the developers team that maintain and who created this framework, do they have anything to do to Angular? So are they just inspired by Angular, or
it's just inspired by Angular? The core team of the NestJS contributors are just inspired by Angular, but maybe they were contributing something, but they're not connected from the organization perspective, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the creator of this framework is the Polish guy.
Nice. I see one question from Pavel. Any performance overhead or overexpress?
The thing here, I forgot to mention, thank you for this question. The NestJS is based on the express or fastify up to your preferences. And I did not provide this benchmark, unfortunately, but I've seen a bunch of the benchmarks, and I passed my own benchmarks on that. And the performance of the NestJS is definitely the same like in Express, and for sometimes it even gives the better results. I was testing with a constant complexity, with linear complexity, and I was trying to do something more objective, and looks like the performance definitely the same like in Express.
Thank you, Artem. There is a question from Michael. The Angular DI is kind of complicated. Is the DI of NestJS similar to Angular's? The injector is hierarchical. hierarchical. At Angular, there are a number of ways to place service on different levels of the injector to provide root and so on. Declare at provider section of a component or module declarations. So I think you got the questions right.
Unfortunately, the first thing here that the DI system in Nest is almost definitely the same as Angular, and the Angular one is even better because we don't have the three shakeable providers, like a provided property in the configuration of the service. We don't have it so far in NestJS, unfortunately. But in total, the system is definitely the same with the models, with the providers directly to the controller or something. So yep, definitely the same. But the question about the complexity of this approach, I guess it's kind of. I can say that it's much more complex than for example, in Spring. We just need to keep the modular system.
Thank you, Artem. There is one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use NRWL monorepo approach library? If yes, did you face any bottleneck cases?
No, I did not use the existing solutions for a monorepo on NestJS and Angular. But one developer at Grid Dynamics, Maxim Karpov, has such experience. Honestly, I can't say that. I can say that I remember the particular name of this library. I can attach it to my presentation, and Maxim has a GitHub repository. On that, and I also guess that you can reach him out on that. I will ask him about that.
Yes,
well, I implemented the monorepo solution on that by myself.
Sorry guys, if I mispronounced the library name, it was Narwhal. There is one more question from Michael. Thank you for the answer. Do you already have some production applications running on NestJS?
Yes, I do have a couple of not really big NestJS application running on the NestJS applications running, and there's like a couple of hundred of people per day, something like that, and it's quite comfortable for me as an Angular developer, as already mentioned. And a couple of my friends are working on the much more loaded projects on the Nest, and their feedback is good as well.
Okay, great. I don't see any other open questions. So yeah, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for all your questions. We really appreciate that. You're a great audience. And okay, I see one more. Oh, no, it's thank you. Thank you guys. So hopefully you will have a chance to apply the new knowledge in practice. We are looking forward to seeing you guys on the subsequent Dynamic Talks events. Thanks to the speakers today. Great talks, guys. And see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye, guys.